So I built this bike off camera over the last couple of weeks, just because I know you guys are getting a little bit stale on classic Honda content. Honestly, I am in desperate need of a change as well, which is why we're going to transition to a couple of different makes and models, actually stuff I've never worked on before, even some modern bikes. There's definitely going to be some interesting content coming up on the channel soon, so I hope you guys are going to enjoy that. This bike is a 77 CB550. I bought it as I don't want to call it a failed project. It was a project that somebody started and then ran out of time or energy or interest or whatever it was. So when I bought it, the engine had recently had a top end rebuild. I did go ahead and pull it out and verify everything was done correctly, compression check, everything looked great. So it was definitely done properly. They even went as far as putting all the nice stainless Allen, socket head screws on there. So it's very, very good condition engine. And honestly, that theme kind of continued throughout the whole bike. This bike is just, it wanted to be put together. I know that sounds a little funny, but some bikes really fight you. This one it just worked. It fired up super easy. It's just a very, very good bike. You can tell that this bike has been kind of taken care of over its lifetime. So I said it's a 77, but it actually has an earlier tank on it. Traditionally, the 77s would have that little gas door in the center. I actually prefer the look of these classic tanks that are anything before 76. Either the 500 or the 550 has that same tank. We painted it in a Ford Blue Jean metallic, just this nice dark blue with some metallic flake in it. Has a nice vintage vibe, so I dig it. I think it fits the rest of the look really nicely. We'll keep going on the cosmetic side of things. So for the front fender, stock front fender chopped like I always do, but we kept it chrome this time, which is something I hadn't done before. And then I also chopped the rear fender and kept it as well. So I know some of you guys didn't like the look of some of my previous bikes that didn't have a rear fender. So instead of doing the traditional frame hoop, I just did some slight frame modifications, chopped the fender, kind of tucked it up under our tough side seat. We're also running that classic bullet style LED brake light just to give it a nice vintage feel. And of course, like I mentioned, we kept that chrome as well. So I think this bike has just the right amount of chrome accents. So there's little pieces kind of all around the bike, that rear fender, and then a little bit lower we have our brushed rear brake and our brushed muffler. Of course, the engine is a nice satin silver with some chrome accents. And then on the front as well, we polished the fork tubes, front fender, a little ring around the headlight, so it kind of brings it all in together. The wheels are stock, but stripped and painted black like I always do. Same Shinko tires I ran on the 750 we finished a couple of weeks ago. These are the Shinko 241s. 3.5 19 for the front, 4.0 18 for the rear. Of course, all the braking system and everything was completely gone through. Factory headlight with MCO mounts. We are running the Kellerman Auto little bullet LED turn signals, which are super bright but super tiny. For controls, we have MCO handlebars. I'll throw a link to most of the stuff in the description below as well. With Motone switches, we are running a full Moto Gadget M Unit Blue on this bike too. So it has the Bluetooth, so you can actually get away with not even having the key. It can just Bluetooth to your phone. That will unlock the bike and you can start it completely keyless, which is really cool to have in a classic bike. We do still have the key, of course. I put it in the side of the battery box on this bike just because the 77s traditionally have a huge ignition switch up here by the gauges. And I, of course, didn't want that messing up the look of the gauges, so I just threw a classic ignition switch in the side of the battery box. I really like the look of it. And again, if you have it Bluetooth to your phone, you don't even have to put that key in. For the exhaust, it's of course my go-to combo, Delcovic 4-in-1 stainless to a Cone Engineering 12-inch stainless universal muffler. I'll throw some links to those because I always get questions about them. It sounds phenomenal. I'll start this bike up in here in a little bit. If you haven't heard this combo before, it is the perfect setup for the 550s. Went ahead and went through the carbs as I always do, vapor blasted them, cleaned them up. I'm running 110 and 40s for the jets because we are running pod filters. Bike starts up great, runs great. It's a perfect combo for the altitude we have here in Texas. Okay, for electronics, we do have a modern regulator rectifier, a small Shore-Eye lithium-ion battery as well to complement the M unit. I already talked about the rear signals. Shocks are just factory sizes, but these black replacements from 4-in-1. All the maintenance items were gone through, of course. New chain, you know, fresh oil, fresh gaskets. I want to make sure the bikes are fully sorted before we send them out to the customer. We are running an aftermarket master cylinder with a stainless line. Already mentioned the Motone switches. I run these nice clean aluminum bar end mirrors on most of my bikes now. The quality seems to be really good. The price is decent. I'll link to those as well. Same traditional gauges I've been running. Sometimes I only run the Speedo. This customer wanted to run the Speedo and TAC combo. Of course, our Speedo has all of our indicator lights and everything built in as well. So all the functionality you would have on a factory setup is retained. So we did run a Dyna S electronic ignition. I'm a huge fan of those. They really wake up these old bikes. They cold start a little bit better. They actually rev a little bit freer. They seem a little bit happier with those electronic ignitions. So we did run that. The customer just wanted this bike to be fully sorted and as reliable as a 43, 44-year-old motorcycle can be. I would not hesitate to jump on this bike and ride it honestly across the country. You could ride this bike every day. It's going to be going to Southern California, so he's going to have the opportunity to ride it year round, and I'm stoked to see it in his hands. I'm going to miss it when the transporter comes and picks it up in a couple of days. So I'll show you guys the electronics. So we turn the key on. Of course, we have our neutral and oil pressure light, turn signals. Of course, they don't look super bright on camera, but I assure you they are, despite how small they are. So we have the 3 button on this side. The top are the turn signals, left and right, of course. Bottom is the horn. The 2 buttons on the right side, the bottom is the start and stop, and the top is the headlight, which does low beam on, switch to high beam, and then of course turns it off. The beauty of that Moto Gadget M unit is you get the full functionality out of just 5 buttons. So let's go ahead and fire this thing up and you can hear how it sounds. She's a happy one. So that's it, guys. That's my last classic Honda for a little while. I do have a couple of more in storage that we'll build maybe later this year, but I am going to switch it up a little bit, try out some bikes I've never worked on before, which is my main kind of focus for 2021. So I have one more customer bike to build, and then we'll be switching over to building exactly what we want. I'm going to build bikes that are my personal bikes. I'm either going to keep them or sell them when they're done, depending on how things are going, but that's going to give us a lot more creative freedom to do whatever we want. And it'll also allow me to make a lot more content for you guys. I'm gonna post a picture of some of those bikes before we start the build and get your input on what you want to see. I want to learn a ton more on like metal fabrication, machining, all that kind of stuff this year. So those bikes are really gonna kind of help me do that. So I'm excited to learn. I'm gonna bring you guys along the way. I appreciate you watching as always, and I'll see you guys on the next one.